All right, let's turn our attention to Week 8. The action on the field. Let's start with game to watch. Tom Fornelli, what is your game to watch for Week 8?
One of my most interesting games of the week for me is the Oregon UCLA game, because if we go back to September and think back way back then when Oregon was going to Columbus and knocking off Ohio State and UCLA was knocking off LSU, it looked like the Pac-12 was experiencing some kind of revival. But ever since then, both teams have kind of sputtered a bit, and I think that this is a huge game for both, especially for Oregon, because its playoff hopes, I would say, are dwindling. Not that I think they have a great chance, but they do still have a chance if they can win out and win the Pac-12 to reach the playoff. And I think this is going to be one of the tougher games left on their schedule. And as for UCLA, they've suddenly found themselves shuffled down in the Pac-12 South. If they want to compete for a Pac-12 title and get to the championship game this year, this is simply a must-win for them. They cannot afford another loss. So there's a lot on the line between two teams who started the season off really hot but have been kind of in a funk since.
Yeah, Tom, you articulated Oregon's problem. The larger problem for the Pac-12 is last time I checked, Oregon did win at Ohio State in week 2, right? I was there. I remember that. I think that's right. I can confirm that. Well, in the AP poll, Ohio State is ranked not ahead of Oregon, 5 spots ahead of Oregon. Yep. Ohio State's 5th, Oregon is 10th. And Ohio State did that, listen to this, did that playing Akron, Rutgers, and Maryland. It's not like they beat 3 top 10 teams. The only team that pushed back on Ohio State this year, they lost to. And they're in the top 5, a hiccup away from the playoff. That's the kind of respect that the Pac-12 now in Oregon is getting. And I suspect some of that's going to carry over to the selection committee. And you're right, Oregon can't afford to lose. The Pac-12 can't afford to lose. Everybody's got a loss, and Oregon's the only team with 1 loss. So if they lose again, the rest of the season, the Pac-12 is out. We can scratch them. They're done. They're done with the playoff because no 2-loss team has ever made the playoff. There's only been one team since 1960 that's won a championship with 2 losses, and that was LSU in 2007. So they're done. And then add to the fact that the last time we saw Oregon, they were struggling at home against Cal. Now, I know Oregon's had a lot of injuries. C.J. Verdell's going to be out. That's going to be a tough game tomorrow. But Chase Garber's down inside the final minute at Autzen with all that crowd screaming, overthrew 2 wide open receivers to with a chance to tie the game. So I like UCLA's chances tomorrow at home. They've had 2, really bad losses to Fresno State and Arizona State, games they probably should have won. And I don't think they've won at home since they beat LSU on opening day. So a lot of pressure, like Tom said, on both these programs.
Oh, I'm going to take it a little bit of a deeper cut here. Let's go to Wake Forest at Army, Michie Stadium. We are going to have an incredible environment with this undefeated top 20 team in town. It'll be on CBS Sports Network, so make sure you go and check it out. But this is a very difficult spot for Wake Forest because some of its toughest and biggest conference games are going to be on the other side of this. And Army just played Wisconsin really, really well. But I do think that Wake Forest's passing attack is able to offer something that Wisconsin's can't, but I could be proven wrong here. Massive game for Dave Clawson. And if you want another storyline, don't forget, Army was one of those programs to do Dave Clawson wrong in the WikiLeaks scandal. They took that information from the radio man and they applied it to their game plan. So maybe there's a little extra vengeance and a little bit of an extra edge for Dave Clawson going up against the United States Military Academy. What about individuals? We've talked about some games to watch. What about a player to watch? Dennis, who is your player to watch for Week 8?
Caleb Williams, Oklahoma freshman quarterback, in a nothing game at Kansas. I'm seriously considering going over there tomorrow. It's 30 miles from my front door and just getting to see Caleb Williams in person. Now, in person at Oklahoma means watching him at the game and then watching him on Zoom. Well, no, I take that back. Not even watching him on Zoom because freshmen aren't allowed to talk at Oklahoma. That's another discussion for another time. But I would like to see him in person. It's like seeing Elvis in the Hawaii special in 1968 on TV and seeing him live. Because this kid is a budding superstar. We can have a discussion about whether a true freshman who so far looks like he could play half the games and be in the Heisman 3 finalists. But he's that good. People can't understand. He's got a man's body. He's 6'3". You saw him the moment he had that 61-yard run against Texas on 4th down and 1. He said, this is something different. That's something Spencer Rattler that can't do. That's why Spencer Rattler is on the bench. And my question has been, ever since Caleb Williams got the job, is how the heck did he not win this job out of camp? Because you're at that point, you're trying to make him transfer. But you have to balance. Lincoln Riley, I guess, has handled it as well as he could. And I still think by the end of this season, he's going to need Spencer Rattler in a key moment. I think both these quarterbacks are going to have to play well for Oklahoma to accomplish their goals. Because Spencer Rattler, people forget, in that Texas game, he scored that or was in there for that 2-point conversion that tied it at 41, change-up quarterback. That was a huge deal. So Spencer Rattler, your backup's completing 75% of his passes. Your starter is a true freshman who looks like Jamel Holloway, the first, not the only, but the first true freshman quarterback to win a national championship. The next one was Trevor Lawrence a couple of years ago. But this kid has a look about him. They just play better. I think you guys agree when he's in there. They look different.
Yeah, and you better get there early if you want to see him in person, because I don't think we'll see much of him in the second half of the way Kansas has been playing this year. My player to watch this week is another quarterback. It's Ohio State's C.J. Stroud. Going back to that Oregon game we talked about in September where the Ducks beat Ohio State, I remember at the time Ohio State fans being seriously concerned and questioning whether C.J. Stroud was playing well enough to continue being the Ohio State quarterback going forward. Even though he threw for nearly 500 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game, it was his fault that the Buckeyes lost. Well, thankfully, CJ's figured it out the last few weeks. In his last 2 games, he's completed 41 of 56 passes for 736 yards, 10 touchdowns, and no interceptions. And this week, he's facing an Indiana defense that we saw last season probably gave Justin Fields a tougher time than any other defense he came across until he got to the college football playoff. And I'm going to be interested in seeing what Tom Allen and that Indiana defense have in store for C.J. Stroud this week to see if he can continue playing as well as he has the last couple of weeks and putting up numbers. And maybe he becomes the guy who we suddenly look at as the Heisman favorite going forward.
If we went deep cuts for segment 1, we're all normies and basics here. Quarterback, and let me put another quarterback on the board. I'm going to be looking at Penn State quarterback Sean Clifford, and I don't think necessarily that he's going to need to carry the fate of the Nittany Lions in this game against Illinois, where Penn State is a heavy favorite. But I want to see how healthy he is, and I want to see how he's going to be performing because Tom mentioned C.J. Stroud. I'm mentioning Sean Clifford. Both of these teams are heavy favorites in the game, but you know what both of these teams have in common? They play next week on October 30th in one of the biggest games of the entire Big Ten season. And so I look at this as, all right, Sean Clifford's back. How healthy is he? How does he look within this offense? Is he getting in sync with Jahan Dotson? Because if Penn State wants to be able to beat Ohio State, they need Sean Clifford to be as good as he possibly can be. This is almost like a warm-up for Clifford to make sure to get him ready. And I'm sorry, Tom, to offer this offense, but this is the AAA warm-up spot here for Sean Clifford so that we can get him ready for the bigs next week against the Buckeyes. All right, what about teams on upset alert? I'm not going to put Penn State on upset alert. I'm not going to put Ohio State on upset alert. Tom, who are you putting on upset alert?
I'll tell you, I'm putting on upset alert me for you calling Illinois a AAA warm-up game. I'm also going to put Pitt on upset alert because they finally, after all this time, got put into both major polls this weekend, only to find themselves hosting a Clemson team that has been incredibly disappointing this season as far as the preseason expectations that were placed on it and the performances we've seen from that program in recent years. And I think this is a really tough spot because for all the struggles that Clemson has had offensively this year, defensively, they've still been very good. And this is a Pitt offense that has been extremely explosive, but also one-dimensional all season long and has kind of struggled the last couple of weeks once it's gotten into conference play compared to where it had been in its non-conference slate. So I look at this as kind of a tricky spot for the Panthers against the Clemson team that's looking to get, its mojo back and maybe find a win to salvage the season and save the season moving forward and maybe go on to win the ACC despite the early season struggles. And I think, honestly, I think the Tigers are going to do it. So I'm putting the Panthers on upset alert.
Okay, the term is upset alert, right? Alert. I'm not calling this, but I'm just saying watch it. Iowa State giving 7 to Oklahoma State in Ames. Now, I fully expect Iowa State to win this game, but because this is the time of year that Oklahoma State starts 5-0, 6-0, and they have a clunker, and they have not done well at Ames lately. I think Iowa State will win, but that line stood out so much that I got into our CBS Sports research guys. I emailed them and I said, guys, when was the last time a top 10 team was that big an underdog to an unranked team? You know the last time it happened? Notre Dame and USC in 1998, where, and I have to read my notes here, USC was favored by 8 over number 9 Notre Dame, and USC won 10-0 with future Heisman winner Carson Palmer. So it's been that long since there was a line like that in this game. So again, I like Iowa State. Are we going to continue to have Brocktober? Brock Purdy, the quarterback, is on fire since 2020. He has thrown 5 touchdown passes and 1 interception and gone 5-1 in those games in the month of October. I think Iowa State is peaking. I actually think Oklahoma State is peaking too after last week. They were very, very good against Texas. But taking that act on the road against what is a pit at Iowa State when they've got it going is going to be tough. But I said alert. I'm just saying alert, Iowa State. Alert, Jalen Warren and all those guys from the Cowboys.
So I'm on your page, Dennis, because I'm not calling this, but Notre Dame better be alert because USC is erratic and USC's floor and ceiling are very, very far apart from each other. But USC's performance also has been much better away from home than it has been in the Coliseum. USC's performance has also been win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, and they can't seem to get any kind of consistency. But coming off a week off with Jackson Dart getting back into full health, they might need to use both Keaton Slovis and Jackson Dart at quarterback. You've got the best offensive player on the field in Drake London, the Trojans wide receiver, but Notre Dame is just way better. But I think that there is a chance that if Notre Dame, which has struggled offensively and still is trying to piece together its quarterback situation with the combination of Jack Cohn and Tyler Buchner, I think there's a chance. So like Dennis said, I'm saying be alert, Notre Dame, because USC might come in to Notre Dame Stadium and have upset on the mind. Our thanks to Dennis Dodd for joining us. Be sure to check him out all weekend. Follow him on Twitter at Dennis Dodd CBS.